Across the Orion expanse, one truth had remained unchallenged for over 5,000 years. The Karen Empire ruled everything. Thousands of star systems paid tribute. Entire civilizations surrendered before the first shot was fired. Their fleets stretched across galaxies, their warships could crack planets apart, and their commanders believed one simple fact. There was no species left capable of resisting them, until their scanners detected a tiny blue planet orbiting an average yellow star. To the Empire's High Council, humanity looked insignificant, primitive, divided. Their satellites intercepted human broadcasts and laughed. They watched sports, political debates, entertainment shows, and endless social media videos. One admiral mocked, "These creatures argue with each other more than they cooperate." Another added, "They still use chemical rockets for some missions. Their technology belongs in a museum." The council unanimously voted. Earth would become another mining colony. No negotiations. No diplomacy. No warnings. The invasion fleet departed immediately. On Earth, no one saw them coming. At least, that was exactly what humanity wanted the galaxy to believe. Deep beneath mountains, hidden under oceans, inside asteroids drifting silently beyond Pluto, massive facilities awakened after decades of silence. Artificial intelligences that had slept since the Cold War activated one by one. Encrypted signals spread across the solar system. Protocol Atlas initiated. Thousands of forgotten military networks came alive simultaneously. Satellites that the world believed were weather stations rotated toward deep space. Commercial cargo ships suddenly changed course. Research stations stopped transmitting scientific data and started sending military encryption codes. Across Earth, governments that had spent centuries competing against one another received the exact same message. Only 6 words. The first contact war has begun. No signatures. No explanations. None were needed. Every world leader already knew what the message meant. For generations, humanity had prepared for one possibility. Not because they expected peace, but because history had taught them something every civilization eventually learns. If someone stronger arrives, they rarely come as friends. Within 12 minutes, every nation stopped fighting each other. Every military command merged into one. Every classified defense project became public between allied governments. Factories that had built civilian vehicles yesterday now manufactured weapons. Orbital elevators stopped transporting cargo. Instead, they began launching something far more dangerous. The Karen scouts observing Earth smiled. Exactly as predicted. Chaos. Confusion. Panic. They reported confidently back to the Empire. The humans are attempting emergency mobilization. Estimated resistance, less than 30 minutes. The High Council celebrated before the battle had even begun. No one noticed the old human general quietly watching the invasion fleet from a classified orbital command station. He didn't look afraid. He almost looked disappointed. As Earth's hidden defense grid finished activating, he calmly whispered to everyone inside the command center, "They made the same mistake every empire makes. They assumed we were showing them everything." The Karen invasion fleet crossed the edge of the solar system without slowing down. Over 12,000 warships advanced in perfect formation, their black hulls swallowing the light of distant stars. Planet-killer cruisers marched beside carrier vessels the size of continents, while millions of autonomous attack drones surrounded the fleet like a storm of metal. To the Karen commanders, this wasn't a war. It was a routine occupation. Grand Admiral Xerxes stood on the command deck of the Imperial flagship, watching the holographic map of the solar system. Mercury? Ignored. Venus? No military value. Mars? A few human colonies. The prize. He smiled confidently. Transmit the surrender demand. Moments later, every communication network on Earth received the same message. People of Earth, your civilization has been chosen to serve the Karen Empire. Deactivate all military assets and prepare for occupation. Resistance will result in total planetary cleansing. Silence followed. No reply. The bridge officers exchanged amused glances. They're terrified, one captain laughed. They don't even know how to answer. Zurich nodded. Advance. The fleet accelerated toward Earth's orbit. Something impossible happened. One by one, human satellites vanished. Not destroyed. Not disabled. Simply gone. Imperial scanners searched desperately. Nothing. What happened? Zurich demanded. No explosion, sir. No debris. No energy signature. They've disappeared. Before anyone could understand the anomaly, every Imperial sensor began receiving thousands of new contacts. Unknown objects. Appearing everywhere. Behind moons. Inside asteroid fields. Near Jupiter. Around Saturn. Even beyond Neptune. The tactical display filled with red warning symbols until it became impossible to distinguish individual targets. Identify them. The AI answered after several seconds. Unknown human military assets. The bridge fell silent. Impossible, whispered one officer. We scanned this system for weeks. The AI continued. Estimated hidden shipyards, 427. Estimated stealth fleets, 96. Estimated orbital defense platforms, classified. Zurich's confidence cracked for the first time. Classified? The AI repeated calmly. Insufficient data. Humanity had hidden an entire interstellar military inside its own solar system. Meanwhile, 3 kilometers beneath the Himalayan mountains, the unified Earth Command came alive. Walls covered with holographic battle maps illuminated the enormous underground chamber. Military officers from every nation stood together, no longer divided by flags. There was only one insignia now. General Amelia Hayes walked toward the central command table. She looked at the approaching Karen fleet without emotion. They finally arrived. An intelligence officer nodded. All Atlas facilities are operational. Quantum communication grid? Online. Orbital defense? Ready. The fleet. A brief smile appeared. Waiting for your authorization. Hayes took a slow breath. For 200 years. We allowed the galaxy to believe humanity never advanced beyond what they could observe. We launched primitive rockets. We argued in public. We pretended to compete. But every war, every invasion in our history, taught us one lesson. She looked around the room. If another civilization ever came, they would judge us by what we allowed them to see. And today, they're about to discover the truth. She placed her hand on the command console. Authorize Atlas. The system acknowledged instantly. Atlas protocol confirmed. Across the solar system, asteroids split open. Comets unfolded into colossal warships. Mining stations transformed into massive orbital cannons. Cargo freighters shed their civilian shells, revealing advanced armored battleships hidden beneath. Thousands, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of human vessels emerged from places the Empire had considered empty space. On the Karen flagship, alarms screamed without stopping. Every tactical screen turned crimson. One terrified officer stared at the impossible numbers. Grand Admiral, they're not defending Earth. They've surrounded us. The bridge went completely silent. For the first time in 5,000 years, the Karen Empire realized they were no longer the hunters. They were the ones trapped. A chilling silence settled over the Karen flagship. The hunters had become the hunted. Grand Admiral Zurich stared at the tactical display, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. Every second, new human warships emerged from the darkness. Massive battlecruisers uncloaked near Jupiter. Swarms of sleek attack frigates poured out of hidden stations inside Saturn's rings. Thousands of drone carriers rose from hollowed-out asteroids that had drifted unnoticed for generations. The solar system wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Estimate enemy strength. Zurich shouted. The Imperial AI paused longer than normal. Then it answered, unable to calculate. The bridge froze. Reason: enemy fleet exceeds all predicted military models. An officer's voice trembled. Sir, they're still appearing. The number of human vessels climbed higher. 50,000. 70,000. 100,000. And it still wasn't stopping. For the first time in Imperial history, the Karen fleet had lost numerical superiority. Deep beneath Earth, General Amelia Hayes watched the battle unfold with absolute calm. The Empire expected soldiers, she said. They never imagined engineers. A young officer looked confused. Ma'am? Hayes smiled faintly. For 2 centuries, humanity fought very few wars. So what did we build instead? Factories. Artificial intelligence. Automation. Fusion reactors. Quantum logistics. Every civilian breakthrough had secretly served another purpose. Every mining operation beyond Mars had supplied hidden shipyards. Every scientific expedition had quietly expanded Earth's military infrastructure. We didn't spend 200 years preparing to survive an invasion, Hayes said. We spent 200 years preparing to end one. She looked toward the operations team. Begin Phase 1. Across the solar system, millions of synchronized signals erupted simultaneously. Human quantum relays activated. Every ship, every drone, every defense platform, connected into a single battlefield intelligence network. No delays. No communication lag. Every vessel reacted instantly to every movement made by the enemy. The Karen commanders couldn't believe it. They're moving like one organism. Another officer panicked. Our targeting computers can't keep up. Human ships weren't flying independently. They were thinking together. Zurich slammed his fist onto the command console. Fire! More than 12,000 Imperial warships unleashed their opening salvo. The darkness exploded with crimson plasma, antimatter lances, and gravity missiles powerful enough to shatter moons. The barrage illuminated half the solar system. Surely, nothing could survive that. Every human ship disappeared. Not destroyed. They simply blinked out of existence. The Imperial weapons passed harmlessly through empty space. What? Before the Karen scanners could react, the human fleet reappeared. Directly behind them, thousands of synchronized rail cannons fired in perfect unison. No dramatic explosions. No wasted energy. Only precise, surgical destruction. Imperial destroyers lost their engines. Command cruisers lost their weapons. Drone carriers lost their communication arrays. Humanity wasn't trying to destroy the fleet. They were dismantling it. Piece by piece. Panic spread through the Imperial formation. They're inside our firing arcs. Our shields are collapsing. We can't lock onto them. They keep teleporting. The battlefield dissolved into chaos. Entire Karen squadrons accidentally fired on each other while trying to track the constantly shifting human vessels. Collisions erupted across the fleet. Human commanders exploited every mistake within milliseconds. General Hayes spoke only one sentence. Continue. That single command echoed across hundreds of thousands of ships. Within seconds, the coordinated assault intensified. Every attack struck a critical weakness. Every maneuver forced the Empire into another fatal error. The Karen had spent 5,000 years defeating weaker civilizations. Humanity had spent 200 years studying how empires fought. And now, they were using that knowledge against them. On the flagship bridge, smoke filled the air as another shockwave rocked the vessel. A terrified communications officer looked up from his console. Grand Admiral, our outer fleets are gone. Another officer interrupted. The second defensive line has collapsed. A third voice followed immediately. We've lost 40% of the invasion force. He swallowed hard. In less than 7 minutes. For the first time in the history of the Karen Empire, victory was no longer possible. Survival itself had become uncertain. The command bridge of the Karen flagship shook violently. Emergency lights flashed crimson. Smoke poured from overloaded control panels as alarms merged into one continuous, deafening scream. For centuries, those alarms had warned other civilizations of their destruction. Today, they warned the Empire of its own. Grand Admiral Zurich gripped the edge of the command console, refusing to believe the battlefield reports. Status. A battered officer struggled to speak. Sir, We've lost contact with Sector 9. Another voice interrupted. Sector 12 has surrendered. Before Xeric could respond, another report arrived. 3 carrier groups destroyed. Planet Killer Division disabled. Command Relay Network offline. Every update was worse than the last. The Empire wasn't losing ships. It was losing control. Across the battlefield, the human fleet moved with terrifying precision. There was no celebration. No reckless pursuit. Every maneuver had been calculated years before the invasion ever began. Human commanders knew exactly where the enemy would retreat. Exactly how they would regroup. Exactly which captains would attempt desperate counterattacks. Every possible scenario had already been simulated thousands of times. General Amelia Hayes stood quietly inside Unified Earth Command. She watched the battle as if reading a completed history book. An officer looked at her in disbelief. They're falling apart faster than expected. Hayes nodded. They built their empire on fear. When fear disappears, so does the empire. Realizing the invasion had failed, Xeric made one final decision. Prepare the Annihilation Corps. The bridge became silent. Even his own officers hesitated. The Annihilation Corps had only one purpose: destroy the solar system. If the Empire couldn't conquer Earth, no one would have it. Massive energy reactors deep inside the flagship began charging. Power levels climbed rapidly. 5%, 20%, 40%. Human sensors detected the buildup immediately. General Hayes received the warning. Enemy flagship preparing stellar-class detonation. The room remained calm. She simply asked, "Has the package arrived?" A communications officer smiled. "Yes, General. Exactly on schedule." Back aboard the flagship, engineers suddenly froze. Every display flickered. Navigation systems failed. Weapon controls shut down. Life support computers began restarting without explanation. "What is happening?" Xeric shouted. The Imperial AI responded. "Unknown external access detected." "Impossible." No transmission penetrated our shields. The AI continued. "Access source." It paused, then displayed one line across every screen. "Humanity was here first." Bridge officers stared in horror. "What does that mean?" Then they remembered. Months earlier, the Empire had recovered what appeared to be an abandoned human reconnaissance probe drifting near interstellar space. Engineers had dismantled it, studied it, connected it to their own research network. They believed it was primitive, worthless. It wasn't. It had never been abandoned. It had been bait. For months, a silent quantum intelligence had spread through the Empire's military network. Waiting, watching, learning. The invasion had only activated its final command. Across thousands of Imperial ships, weapons powered down, engines shut off, targeting systems locked, communication arrays went dark. The greatest fleet in galactic history had become helpless. Without another human shot being fired, the battlefield fell strangely quiet. Human warships surrounded the drifting Imperial vessels. Not a single escape route remained. General Hayes gave her final order. Broadcast on every frequency. Moments later, every surviving Karen ship received the same transmission. Hayes appeared on their screens. Her voice was calm, steady, unshaken. "You believed humanity was weak because we valued peace. You believed compassion was a flaw. You mistook patience for fear." She looked directly into the camera. "You came to conquer our home. You threatened our children. You planned our extinction." A brief silence followed. "Your empire lasted 5,000 years. It took humanity." She glanced at the battlefield timer. 15 minutes. Outside the flagship windows, hundreds of thousands of human warships illuminated the darkness like a wall of stars. For the first time in living memory, the Karen Empire understood a terrifying truth. Earth had never been the weakest civilization in the galaxy. It had simply been the quietest. Silence spread across the battlefield. Where thousands of Karen warships had once advanced with absolute confidence, only drifting wreckage and powerless vessels remained. The battle timer inside Unified Earth Command stopped. 15 minutes. 0 seconds. No cheers erupted. No celebrations echoed through the command center. The men and women who had defended Earth simply returned to their stations. For them, this wasn't a victory. It was the successful completion of a mission they had prepared for over 2 centuries. General Amelia Hayes looked at the final tactical report. Enemy invasion fleet neutralized. Human casualties? A young officer smiled with visible relief. Minimal, General. She nodded quietly. Begin rescue operations. The room fell silent for a moment. One commander asked in surprise, "Rescue operations for the Karen?" Hayes answered without hesitation. "Yes. They're defeated. They're no longer our enemy. Humanity doesn't become an empire by acting like one." Across the solar system, thousands of human medical ships emerged from hyperspace. Rescue drones moved between damaged Imperial vessels. Escape pods were recovered. Wounded Karen soldiers received medical treatment alongside injured humans. Imperial survivors stared in disbelief. One Karen captain whispered, "Why are they saving us?" A human medic secured an emergency oxygen mask over the alien's face. "Because that's what we do." The captain had no reply. Everything the Empire believed about humanity had been wrong. 3 days later, a galactic emergency council was called. Representatives from hundreds of civilizations gathered in the largest diplomatic chamber ever constructed. The atmosphere was tense. For thousands of years, every species had feared the Karen Empire. Now, that empire no longer existed. The enormous chamber doors opened. Every delegate stood. A single human delegation entered. No weapons. No soldiers. No grand display of power. Only General Amelia Hayes and a handful of diplomats. Whispers spread throughout the chamber. "That's the species that defeated the Empire. In 15 minutes. Impossible." Hayes stepped to the center podium. She activated a holographic display showing Earth floating peacefully against the darkness of space. Then she spoke. "We did not come here to claim your worlds. We did not come to replace one empire with another. We came with a simple message." The chamber became completely silent. For centuries, humanity hid its strength. Not because we were afraid, but because power without wisdom creates monsters. She paused, letting every delegate absorb her words. The Karen believed fear could unite the galaxy. They were wrong. Respect unites. Cooperation unites. Hope unites. Then she delivered the sentence that would echo through history. If humanity ever raises its fleets again, it will never be to conquer. It will be to protect. Months passed. Across the galaxy, old borders disappeared. Former enemies signed peace treaties. Trade routes reopened. Scientific knowledge was shared freely. Worlds that had lived under the shadow of the Empire finally experienced peace. Human engineers helped rebuild devastated colonies instead of occupying them. Human doctors cured diseases once thought impossible. Human scientists shared clean energy technologies with civilizations that had never known abundance. The galaxy slowly realized something extraordinary. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been its teleportation drives, or its hidden fleets, or its impossible technology. It was its ability to choose mercy when revenge would have been easier. Years later, children across dozens of worlds studied the Battle of Seoul. Their teachers always ended the lesson with the same question. How did humanity erase an empire in 15 minutes? The answer was never about weapons. It was never about numbers. It was never about superior technology. It was about preparation, unity, courage, and one truth that every civilization would remember forever. Never mistake a peaceful people for a powerless one. For when humanity is forced to fight, it doesn't fight for conquest. It fights for home. And when humans fight for home, even empires disappear.